Did you know that in the state of Tennessee, there are cemeteries that have unique graves known as tent graves or comb graves? Beginning in the mid 1800s and used until the early 1900s, these graves are covered with two rectangular slabs of stone leaning together to form a tent like structure over the ground where the person is buried. The ends are closed off by another stone that was cut to fit into the openings. It is estimated that there were approximately 3,600 tent graves scattered throughout cemeteries on the Cumberland Plateau region of Tennessee. While not much is known as to why tent graves started gaining popularity in the mid 1800s, many have theorized that they were used to protect the graves from either weather or animals or both. However, could there be a more religious meaning behind them? Beginning in 1800, primarily in Kentucky and Tennessee, America began experiencing the Second Great Awakening, during which religious revivals, conducted mostly outside in camps, had an enormous effect on American society and social reform, and it stressed that personal responsibility and individual piety was important for salvation. This period marked a wave of religious enthusiasm, and it increased the number of Christians across the country. If a more personal connection with God was to be embraced during life, then perhaps an expression of that personal connection was also used upon death. The tent is symbolically mentioned several times in the Bible. When examining the Old Testament, the tent of meeting was a phrase used to describe the place or temple where God would meet with his people through Moses. The tent represented a personal, consistent connection with God, or in other words, God was personally available to man, which was one of the main tenets of the Second Great Awakening. Further, in the New Testament, several references to the word tent is used to describe the earthly dwelling or body. For example, in 2 Corinthians 5 verses 1 through 5, Paul referred to the human body as the tent that is our earthly home, and describes further that it is a temporary place that will cease to exist at death, when the person will be gifted with the heavenly dwelling made by God himself. The tent, therefore, is symbolic as a temporary dwelling place, and it's only meant to protect us from the elements for a time until we can find permanent shelter and safety. When examined in this context, it becomes at least plausible that tent graves became fashionable during a time when people were encouraged to have a personal relationship with God rather than connecting with Him through the authority of the church. Although we may never know the exact reason as to why tent graves were constructed, perhaps a dual purpose is the answer, as the bodies buried beneath were physically protected from the elements, animals, and grave robbers, while at the same time displaying each person's belief that death is temporary, as a more permanent home is waiting in heaven.